Today we're back in Central America looking at Panama. We're going to look at some of its interesting assets such as the canal and also some of its mines. Before we do that, I'm going to just show you my new website. It's something that it's got like a working concept worldwide, Robyn Doyle, Geopolitics and Economics. I'm hoping to do maybe some posts here over the next couple of months when I have time away from my other commitments. But yeah, let's go on straight to the video. So in the context of economics, Panama is a very important bottleneck for trade, specifically maritime trade. If you consider the USA, we know that they have a big coast on the west and the east, and that means that their navies need to be connected in an efficient manner. And the alternative, of course, would be going through the often frozen straits of Canada, which is not really a good alternative considering how long that would take, or going all around the world via the Cape of Good Hope or Suez Canal and around the Pacific. And then we get to the west coast, or you go south via the strait down here of Magellan at the south of Chile. So the alternative had to be a canal through here. And when you look at the map, you know, even a child could tell you, oh, wouldn't it be best to do it through Panama because it is the smallest point in terms of land. There was an effort for a while to make a effort through Nicaragua. You can see here where that would have been. So you could see would be quite easy to connect this section, but then this would be quite a lot of effort when we compare the amount of land that has to be dug through for the Panama section. Yeah, it's a significant smaller amount. So let's see what actually ended up happening. We see here there is a very clear route through that was cut out. It is a lock canal, which a lock canal, I think I told you before in one of my other videos, and most of you probably understand this, is that you kind of have to go uphill. The body of water in the inside this lake isn't at sea level, so in order to do that you make a lock, and a lock is it's like kind of like a little unit where you put the boat in, you lock it on one side, and then you let water flow in, and it rises the boat up like a staircase, and that therefore it can go up and up and up into the mountains and back down again on the corresponding side. The French tried to build this canal initially, and they wanted to have a sea level body water on the inside. That would have taken a lot more excavation and a lot more effort. However, it would have been a long-term, perhaps better plan, because at the moment they've got issues in Panama where there isn't enough rainfall to sustain the traffic needed through the canal, because you need water up here to be able to flow down into the locks specifically. Let me show you a small bit the amount of traffic that does go through these, which at least according to this particular plate taken, I don't know what date it is, you can see there just are a lot of boats, specifically container vessels, that do go through here on a regular basis. I will also show you the massive amount of boats sitting, waiting to enter out here. They're just like a shoal of fish. Like, that's just so many boats. Interestingly, a lot of boats are registered underneath the Panama flag. There'll be a new story that I'll show you about how the Iranians are using that system to evade sanctions from the US. Which the US, of course, isn't too proud of, or sorry, isn't too happy about, ever since they pulled out of that nuclear deal with the Iranians a while ago. Okay, I want to start with some of the tabs I have here. Panama is largely dependent on the mining, agriculture, and timber industries. However, the canal is a big part of that. I think the canal brings about 4 billion in revenue to a country that has 20 billion in GDP. Let's quickly check that number. I think it is, let's see here, GDP. Okay, my bad. 77 billion GDP, but still 4 or 5 billion from just the canal is, you know, quite a big amount, and it's quite consistently always there. There isn't a huge fluctuation in that. Even though they were down a bit this year, I probably have a tab open on that again. We'll come across it in a while. Also looking at the economic zones in Panama, I have this very nice map from Wikipedia. So yellow, I believe, is just unused rainforest, because there isn't any specific yellow indication here, and we'll see in a minute how green Panama is, but there is this kind of core striped zone for cattle. Bananas, we're going to look at some of the banana plantations in a minute. Specifically, I can't pronounce the names, I'm not going to try, I'll show it to you in a moment. Coffee is brown, sugarcane is green. So let's look at the bananas. Changuilla, I told you I couldn't, I shouldn't try pronouncing it. So Panama is known for bananas, specifically bananas grow in the climate here particularly well, and it ends up giving us this monoculture system in some of the areas where you just have banana plantations for miles and miles and miles. I did put a camera down on the ground here. You can see the palm trees, I'm pretty sure those are banana palm trees. I'm not an expert though on which are which. Again, here you can see from the side of the road we have banana palm trees, and I have a particular map open here. Maybe it's this one here, showing the same one from Apple Maps, and this one shows us a little bit better the palm trees themselves growing. Literally nothing else is growing other than palm trees, which of course is not good for the ecosystem or biodiversity, but is good for local incomes. And of course, we all love bananas and all around the world, and massive container ships come into Europe every week with just fruit from the South American and Central American regions. There was something here that I wanted to show you specifically. It was, again, a variation in the Apple Maps, the Google Maps. We have a lot of container shipping in naturally through the canal, but also a lot of containers end up on the ports of Panama. So here we have this big, massive port, both being loaded and unloaded. Imagine that could be bananas going to Europe or to America. And here we have an empty car park. Well, mostly empty, except for a few hundred cars maybe parked there. If we go back to the Google Maps, we can see a very different look a few months or years before. I'm sure this car park opens and empties regularly, full of cars. These are probably cars being imported probably into Panama itself if they're going to be parked there. Yeah, relatively interesting. Another interesting story which we're going to come across is that Maersk, because of the water issues, was actually creating a land bridge across Panama using rail and trucks to move a lot of this material and containers to these ports when the water wasn't at a high enough level. Yeah, so I'll close off these to save us on the computer, and I'll keep working through here. This is just general Panama Canal news. I'll also go to the history of the canal a little bit later. But Maersk to phase out Panama Canal land bridge. That was that news story. I think it's here from sourcingjournal.com. Maersk to source out this land bridge in May. A good sign for the state of the canal upon reinstating its Oceania to the Americas service through the waterway in May. Container shipping halted the service and had been using a 15-mile land bridge due to the water issues. But there are some kind of contradictory articles talking about how there won't be enough water long term. Let's see if I can find that one. Panama Canal Authority reassures shipping there will be enough water as waiting times grow. So there was kind of a bit of angst, let's say, in relation to that. Let me see if I can find that other specific one. The Panama Canal will take months to recover from precipitation deficit. Enterprise News. .news. It'll take the rest of 2024 to recover from the drought that has plagued it since last year. The drought has depleted the canal's water reserves, crippling vessels' movements, causing millions in losses for shippers. And these losses are interesting. There was another statement out by Maersk, and I believe another sourcing journal article. Container shippers lost nearly 700 million in the last quarter of 2023, and it goes on about talking about issues in the Red Sea, but also I believe, you know, if you're having to send your stuff via land bridge over Panama, that's going to also affect your shipping costs. You know, it's not as efficient. We all know that shipping is many, many times cheaper than using road or rail. Specifically cheaper than road, though. Rail is not too bad, but yeah, shipping much, much better. Also, the waiting time, the unloading time, the reloading time, it's a massive bottleneck, you could say. And, you know, these canals are bottlenecks in their own right. This was a Port economicsmanagement.org graph showing the major bottlenecks in the world for shipping. Now, we're looking at Panama specifically. You can see how important Panama is for the American sphere of operations. But Europe, we have Gibraltar, which isn't such a big bottleneck. Suez is bigger because you have an actual canal up here in the Baltic Sea as well. Hormuz is a big one. That's where all the oil comes out from Saudi Arabia. So if the Iranians wanted to block that, they could basically cripple a lot of the world's oil supplies straight from that, from the Gulf, from the Persian Gulf. And the Strait of Malacca is also really important for Chinese exports to Europe, as well as Chinese imports such as oil and other resources. So yeah, it is a bottleneck. If you have to avoid using the actual water system itself, it's even a bigger bottleneck and an even bigger problem economics-wise, and therefore a big problem for Panama. But apparently, I think they only lost about 14% of revenue last year. So even though they have had this water issue, they haven't been suffering that much. Probably because if you can't offer as much services, the price for that service probably goes up as well in a kind of relevant manner. This is a financial report from Maersk, and here I wanted to show you ocean results turn negative in quarter 4 in line with expectations following challenging market development. specifically the Red Sea Houthis, I think, is what they're talking about there as well. And we see a big minus 400. Did I already scroll past it? Let's see, 2023. Quarter four. Oh yeah, here we go. Quarter four 2023, underlying loss of 400 million. But they actually still made a huge profit of about 3,000 million for the year. So they're not suffering terribly. I actually opened up their more in-depth Excel sheet on their profit and losses and overall operations. It's very interesting to see this. I haven't looked at these before. So that was pretty cool. Panama Canal again. Panama Canal restrictions set to ease as rains roll in. MERS to resume, blah, blah, blah. U.S. Supreme Court backs Panama Canal owner dispute with builders. Just interesting to see the news specifically there. This was the U.S. Urges Panama to remove flag from rogue Iranian ships, especially United envoy saying that Iran are evading sanctions here in Panama. They're trying to abuse Panama's flag registry. Washington suspects that they're using Iran to transport some of them are used by Iran to transport oil to bypass sanctions since the withdrawal from the landmark nuclear deal, which I mentioned earlier in the video as well. So a lot of interesting stories in Panama on the economic side there. Let's look quickly at the mines, since I want to kind of move on to the history of the canal in a few minutes. Again, I feel like every video I do, I'm being told that the country in question has one of the largest copper ore reserves in the world. We looked at Chile, also looked at Australia, and apparently Panama is also pretty big into mining. So here is our mine in the middle of, I suppose, is you could really call it a tropical rainforest. Let me zoom out even more. This mine's almost visible from space, I was going to suggest, but yeah, that place is a bit different there. But you can see how big this mine complex is. Take a quick look at it. I haven't actually looked at this in detail yet. Let the resolution pick up there. Just a big sprawling open cast mine. Hard to appreciate how deep that is there from this particular angle, but yeah, it looks pretty cool to me. I'm always impressed by these massive infrastructure projects. Of course, it's destroying the local diversity and biodiversity, I should say. So that's unfortunate, but of course, I'm sure that they do rely on the income from these mines quite a lot, and so do we in terms of products. Those are interesting. They're like big domes or pits, some description. And here we have much more very interesting infrastructure. Again, I always want to get tours of these places when I go to any country. I like to try and get into these places. It's often quite hard, but I have been to some really cool places, specifically in my home country, into factories, into like robotic labs. These things just really are cool to see for at least once or twice in a lifetime. To be able to explore such operations is pretty cool in my opinion. Okay, I'm going to move on, I think, now to the next tabs I have open here. We'll quickly run through the economic indicators because I kind of want to wrap up on the canal's history. So let's quickly have a look at that. In terms of fragility, it's a stable country. Yeah, no big surprises there. In terms of energy, let's have a look at this. What are the overall numbers? Production is way less than consumption, but 10 times less. You can see that there. They consume a little bit of coal, a little bit of gas, a lot of oil products, and they probably have a hydro dam somewhere, maybe. That might be what that might be. Let's see if we get a breakdown actually. Oh yeah, right now they're importing energy from, is that Costa Rica, who's importing from Nicaragua, who's importing from El Salvador, who's importing from Mexico, and the United States are exporting to Mexico. So it's like the US are feeding electricity all the way down to Panama. It's a possibility. Of course, it's possible that Mexico is also producing a lot. Just interesting to see these flows. Yeah, let's have a look at Panama specifically. Do we get any interesting yearly information? Reload that. Hydro, huge hydro projects in Panama, clearly. So for the year, hydro was the biggest player. No nuclear, so that would kind of correspond to this being hydro specifically. Coal, wind, solar, gas, oil. Let's have a look at that. Hydro has always been a big deal. Okay, so actually look at that big decrease in hydro. That's probably to do with less water being available, and you have to kind of juggle, or you can use your water for your shipping or for your hydro. That's probably it. Even I'm hoping that the hydro system is independent of the shipping system. You would hope that would be the case. I'm going to quickly run through. So the boats come in here specifically. Then you have these massive locks. We can kind of appreciate the fall here. It's a bit hard to see, but it obviously isn't a huge distance to get to this lake. Like, it isn't hundreds and hundreds of meters. We do have nice pictures later on of these locks in action. These boats are obviously leaving. These boats are coming in. So there's probably equal transport from left to right. Then the boats go through this massive lake. Now this area, I think, has also been flooded a bit. It's been backed up to increase the water held in it. And we'll look at the history of how mosquitoes were a big issue when this was being developed and a lot of people died. It's like a causeway running along here. We can follow the boats. They come through here. You see them on their movement there. Then they go to the right here, I believe, and come into this section. There's a big boat there as well, ship. And then they make their way out of the canal through this section. This section was very difficult to construct because they had to dig a lot out of the mountain. They had to, back when they were doing it, we'll get the exact dates again, 1900s or 1800s. I think it was early 1900s. They had to basically drill holes with air compressed drills and then stuff them with dynamite and blow them up and then remove them with steam shovels. And there's some very cool pictures from that as well that I'm going to show you in a bit. Here's one of the locks again, and another lock system there as well. Maybe we'll get a number for how much the elevation is, but yeah, that's it right there, the entire Panama Canal network. And then the boats go out here, where again, all of the crazy amount of boats are waiting to line up. And there probably is a big wait time. I mean, I don't know how many hours it takes for one boat to go through, but there isn't even enough water. They could be waiting for, yeah, maybe even days. Who knows how long it takes, depending on how bad the water supply is. Okay, let's move along. Okay, rankings aren't too important for this in terms of stability, though this is quite interesting. Freedom Index 83, it's a pretty high rating. In terms of GDP growth, nothing particularly exciting there. Well, 4% is very good, but it isn't like Guyana, which we just saw the last day. Okay, look at that, 15% after a 17% reduction in the COVID years. So that's kind of the recovery and then coming back down. 6 is pretty good though, specifically. So I'll take it back. That's actually quite healthy growth. I wonder, is that... look at all the South American, should I say Central American countries are doing pretty well currently. Haiti there, Puerto Rico in the minus numbers. Take a quick look at debt. Let's see. 52, which is not too bad. They used to be higher, and the big push there during the COVID years, all the way to 62, and they're kind of recovering that again. Unemployment rate, not the best. Look at that big spike there. 16% in the 1990s, all the way down to 4%, and then COVID messed everything up. Well, yeah, 14%, and they're kind of recovering. That's also pretty good. And yeah, this is also interesting. They have no military spending as of now. Why did that change to that? Let me show you the 2020, 2004. Yeah, 2020. Look at that. 0% of GDP spent on military spending. So they probably just rely on the US or whoever to guarantee that. Is that the correct one? It is, yeah. That's just curious. I haven't seen that on too many countries that have seen such a low. So it must be completely outsourcing it, potentially, because you think of how important it is to the US. And again, this idea that the US and their Navy kind of, in order to be able to access both sides of their Navy bases, if a boat gets built in Texas or wherever they get built and needs to be shipped to the Navy ports here, that's where it would go. It would go through there. And there is a really cool picture. If I could just guess, I think it's this one. This is the USS Missouri. Yeah, Missouri. World War II. Probably World War I. I'm not entirely sure, but it looks like World War II boat. Okay, I should probably just check that. USS Missouri. Really cool looking machine. In the 1940s, yeah, so there we go, World War II specifically. Looks a bit less, I mean, it just looks, yeah, like a really frightening thing to be coming across, especially in black and white. It looks much more imposing actually than in the colored picture. But it's a very big deal for the US Navy in that sense. I might make a video on that again more specifically. But before I move on, the US can do that because they have the canal. The Russians can't do that. The Russians have got what they call, I think it's called the Four Seas problem. So they have a navy here, and a navy here, and a navy here, and a navy in the Black Sea. They're not really well connected. Russia's such a big country that if you want to move your boats, your ships, your fleet to like one attack or to defend one point in the Black Sea, for example, you're never going to get your boats from the Arctic Sea down there in time to be of any use over to Asia. Whereas the US has got that Panama Canal option. And that's why the Japanese wanted to destroy it in World War II. I also have a tiny point on that. Japanese on June 6, submarines and aircraft began training for night operations in preparation for a surprise Japanese airstrike against the Panama Canal, in which submarines would launch 10 planes, which were to strike the locks from the east with 6 torpedoes and 4 bombs, emptying the reservoir, the entire lake, probably. See, Gaston, emptying the Gaston Lake and blocking the canal to shipping for months, which would of course mean that those US boats that go out the long way, those ships, because they were kind of protected on the US side, on the east side, like the Japanese wouldn't be able to target the fleets if they were parked there. I'm pretty sure there's a huge fleet in Texas somewhere. But yeah, okay. Let's stay on topic. I want to now just run through the history of the canal in itself. So I've decided I'll do a separate video for the history of the canal just to make these videos not too long. So yeah, that video that I made right now is just exploring the general economic factors, not looking at the indicators. But yeah, in the next video that I'll upload, it'll be about the history of the canal. So stay tuned for that.